if someone comes up and says, oh, this political party is being censored or this political group is being censored, don't just automatically think that because that group or that person is being censored that they're the good guys, that they are fighting for a righteous cause. Actually look at their ideology and see what they believe in. But if you see someone being persecuted and you see that those people who are being restricted or censored are advancing a very dangerous and demonic ideology like Nazism, and you still support those people, then I would say you're a walking red flag. All right, everyone. So I want to talk to you guys about the idea of banning ideological groups and how it really does not work if that ideological group represents a growing trend in society. Because when you try to ban a group and that group represents a viewpoint that is growing tremendously in popularity, and that group represents a worldview that is a part of the zeitgeist and that is a part of the growing ideological groundswell, what always happens is that group is seen as a group of martyrs. That group is seen as persecuted. And so then people look at that group and say, why is that group being banned? This is not right. What does that group stand for? And people will begin to sympathize with what that group stands for. And what got me to do this video, a couple of things actually. One is the news coming out of Germany about how there is much talk about banning the AfD party. And another thing is me reading this book. I've been reading this book. It has been quite interesting. It's called East-West Street, and it is a book written by a man who is trying to inquire and investigate the life of his grandfather who survived the Holocaust. So the author of the book is going through this journey. He's going through this investigation, and he wants to know more about his grandfather's life, what his grandfather went through during the Third Reich's reign over Europe. He inquires deeply into this because his grandfather never really talked to him about the Holocaust. Reading the book, he talks about his grandfather's life in light of what was happening at that time, in light of all of the chaotic political circumstances at that time, and how there was this growing hatred against the Jews. So let's go back to the AfD, and I'll segue back to this topic. The AfD is a major nationalist party in Europe. It is now one of the biggest political parties in Germany. It has been winning major political victories within recent elections in Germany. It is a nationalist far-right party. It is, and I know I could be angering some people saying this or frustrating some people saying this, but the AfD party is really just it's a repackaged Nazi party. One of its main leaders is Björn Höcke, who basically has made it quite obvious that he is sick and tired of seeing Holocaust memorials. There was one AfD leader who was caught dancing on top of a Holocaust memorial. There was one member of the AfD who said, how I wish Hitler would come back. I miss you, dear Adolf Hitler. I mean, just crazy stuff like that. And when you see enough details like that, when you see enough weird happenings like the ones I've just described, I mean, it's quite apparent that this group is just weird. This group is just filled with red flags, and there is something very off about this. Now, they're not going to come out and say, oh, Sieg Heil, we love Hitler. But when you look at these details here and there, because it's very difficult for a group just to hide its true intentions forever, right? It's impossible for an ideological group or for a political group just to hide what it wants to do, just to hide its motivations forever. Things are going to leak through the creeks. Things are going to come out eventually. And so you see these little details. You see these little statements coming out here and there. You see these sorts of exclamations coming out from various speeches here and there. And you say, okay, there's something deeply wrong with this group. And you have people who say, oh no, they're actually just center-right. Really, center-right? Really? A political group which has a leader who talks about how he's tired of seeing Holocaust memorials and how We need to have a 180-degree shift in how we see German history and all this stuff. This is not a center-right group. This is a ultra-nationalist, pan-German group that has Nazi sympathies. It's quite obvious. Oh, and by the way, Bjorn Holke has stated that the Messiah of Germany is living somewhere in a cave in a mountain somewhere, and he will come back and bring back the Reich. What? This is not center-right? Oh yes, these German nationalists, they're just like, I don't know, Rush Limbaugh somewhere. I mean, this is like an Iranian political leader saying that the 12th Imam is waiting in a well somewhere and he's going to come back and save Iran from the Jews and the Sunnis. Imagine, and this guy is saying the Messiah of Germany is living in a cave and he's going to come back and he's going to bring the Reich, he's going to restore the Reich. I mean, you see all this crazy stuff. So obviously AfD is no damn good. And there has been a lot of talk in Germany about banning the AfD. Now, if they succeed officially in banning the AfD, right? Let's just imagine this sort of scenario. The AfD is now banned. The biggest right-wing party in all of Germany, probably the most extreme party out of all of these successful right-wing parties in Europe right now. Let's say that they ban this party. What do you think would happen? All of the entirety of the right wing, all throughout the Western world, will be saying, oh my goodness, truly, truly, these are the good guys. And we must support them more. And you would have demonstrations throughout Germany supporting the AfD, going against censorship, all these things. They will have to get the police on the demonstrators, and then demonstrators are going to get beaten up, and it's going to make the right wing look even better. It's going to make the ultra-nationalists look like victims of the elites. They're going to gain more support. You cannot stop a movement once it has broken through a particular threshold of popularity. And once a group becomes popular enough to the point where it's making double digits in elections, to the point where it's getting 29 or 30% of the vote, the train has been set. The locomotive is going. You ain't gonna stop what's coming. It's growing. It is growing. It is now a part of the zeitgeist. Now, here is the thing about banning a group, is that, and I've said this before, when you ban a group, the group now feels even more legitimate. The group actually feels empowered when a government comes along and says, you are banned, you as a group can no longer exist, that group feels empowered. If it truly believes in what the group says it believes in, that group feels empowered. One of the things about human nature is that every time when we stand up for something that we really believe in, when the state comes along and says, you cannot be a part of this group, that group feels empowered and it feels stronger. The biggest thing in society, the state, is now telling me that I can't exist, that I cannot exist as this particular group that I want to exist in. How? I must be really scaring the state. I must be terrifying the elites. It would be like, let's say you're a political activist. Let's say you're pro-life and you're fighting abortion. And all of a sudden, I don't know, Joe Biden sends you a letter and says, I really wish you guys would stop this. I mean, are you going to stop doing pro-life activism? You're going to keep on going. Because now, the most powerful person in the U.S. government, the executive branch, is telling you that you should stop doing the cause that you truly believe in your heart of hearts, that you truly, deeply believe within the depths of your soul. You are going to feel so empowered because you're going to say to yourself, man, my work is really making gains. I am really making an impact to the point where the most powerful man in American politics is threatened by me. It makes you feel even more empowered because it lets you know that you're instilling fear into the heart of those who are against your cause. It's the same thing with Christianity. They tried to ban Christianity. They have tried, several governments in history have tried to ban Christianity in history. The Roman government tried to ban Christianity. Before that, you had the religious/political Jewish system in Judea trying to crush Christianity, and it did not work. They crucified Christ, and they said, we got rid of the problem. The leader of this troublesome group is gone. We killed them. We nailed him onto a cross. He's done. We got rid of the whole group. Now they're all going to scatter like sheep. We struck the shepherd. Now the sheep are going to scatter. And they didn't scatter. It emboldened them even more when they saw Christ back from the dead. It emboldened them to the point where they became martyrs. And the Roman government tried to ban Christianity. They said, well, we will do the most excruciating, most horrific, most gruesome violence on these people. We will inflict utter carnage on these people. We will feed them alive to lions and tigers. Alive. We'll starve all these wild beasts, and we'll feed the Christians to them. We'll feed the Christians to these starving beasts as entertainment. I mean, that's horrifying. That's terrifying. That's terrifying. You know, it reminds me of this letter that I read from St. Irenaeus of Lyon. He talks about the Christians of Gaul, the martyrs of Gaul. You can read this letter online. And he talks about how the Christians were taken to the arena, and they would be forced into the arena where they would be fed to wild beasts. One Christian man was put onto a steel chair that had been soaked into the flames, and so he was charbroiled alive because he refused to deny Christ. And the whole crowd would cheer, and they would go into utter hysterical ecstasy watching Christians being cooked alive and eaten alive. I mean, that is horrifying, but it didn't stop Christianity. And numerous emperors, from the pagan ones to the heretical ones, tried to crush Christianity, and it failed every single time, because when something is a big enough movement, and when it's growing in a very healthy rate in popularity, and when people truly believe in the cause, you cannot stop it. You can't stop it. The Mexican government tried to ban Christianity under the dictator Plutarco Elias Calles. That didn't work. You cannot stop a movement. It's impossible. And I wish more and more governments would figure this out, that when you ban a movement, you give it energy. You give it energy. When you try to persecute a movement, you give it energy. With that said, and I was using Christianity as an example of what I mean, let's go back to the rise of Nazism. And I'm sure it goes without saying that I'm not equating, nor am I comparing Christianity with Nazism. I'm simply using the history of Christianity as an example of how it is impossible to ban a movement once it becomes big enough. In the Austrian government, there was a lot of talk about the Nazis. The Nazis were growing in popularity. National Socialism as a movement was extremely popular in Austria and in Germany. And the mainstream parties in both Austria and Germany were very, very worried about the rise of Nazism. And so the Austrian government banned the Nazi Party. Yeah, the Nazi Party was banned. The Nazi Party was banned in Austria. So they said, okay, we got rid of the problem. We banned it. It's done. They're banned. Haha, they're banned. You see, we defeated them. We just banned them. We just legislated the problem away. We just legislated our political competitor out of existence. They're gone. Well, I'm going to read to you guys some excerpts here, or maybe just one excerpt here, from this book, East-West Street. He talks about the rise of Nazism in Germany and in Austria. And he says here that the Austrian Chancellor, Engelbert Dollfuss, banned the Austrian Nazi Party, and other measures followed. Dollfuss, this is what happened to him, by the way, the Chancellor of Austria. So he bans the Nazi Party. Okay, Nazis can't really do anything politically anymore, right? It's against the law. Halt in the name of the law. He was murdered in July 1934 by a group of Austrian Nazis led by Otto von Wachte, a local lawyer who would, a decade later, as Nazi governor in Lemberg, create the Waffen-SS Galician Division. Waffen-SS Galician Division, by the way, was the Nazi SS division in the Ukraine, for all the Ukrainian Nazis who loved Hitler. And just to make this point, this is just a little side note, in Ukraine today, there is a very strong movement, especially in Western Ukraine, to revere the Waffen-SS Galician, which was founded by an Austrian man who murdered the Chancellor of Austria. So the Austrian government, they really tried to stop it, and it didn't work. So if the German government wants to help the AfD, if they want to help these modern-day Nazis, they should ban the party. Right? If you really want to help those Nazis get even more popular, just ban them. Just say, nope, we're done. Oh, I saw this video on Twitter. Oh, it's known as X now. It showed this guy, and he was meeting up with some French parliamentarians who are not a part of his party, and they all refuse to shake his hand. Well, that makes that far-right politician look good. I mean, people don't understand this. Let's say you're very malicious and you're very competitive in the political realm, which, I mean, in the political world, it's a given that it's a given that it's a malicious and backstabbing world, and it's a world. The political world is a place for the cunning. The cunning are the ones who succeed in politics. But if you're going to be a cunning politician, I mean, you would go up to your political enemy and shake that person's hand and smile and act as if you're absolute friends with this person, or that you're going to be friendly and cooperative and cordial with this person. Once you start acting nasty with an opponent, you don't shake the person's hand, or you talk about banning your enemy's political party, all of that makes your enemy look good. All of it. That all makes your enemy look good. And it makes you look bad. It's like when all the people attack Islam and the Muslims start rioting. I wish the Muslims would finally understand that don't make your religion look good. People say, wait a second, that guy said Islam is violent, and now these Muslims are acting violent, and they're proving this guy's point. The rioting doesn't help your cause. But you see, this is how human nature works, and for some reason, not a lot of people understand this. If you want to help the Nazis, in the modern-day Nazis in Germany, ban them. It'll make them stronger. It'll make their political movement stronger. You just look at this whole thing, this whole political quagmire of what's happening in the world, and it's just surreal. You see this party, the AfD, and it's got a bunch of Nazi sympathizers in it. They took first place in the political election in Thuringia, which is where, by the way, Bjorn Höcke leads the AfD, and he is a person who has said that we need to have a 180-degree shift in our view of history. He talks about how we need to have this new German nationalism for the fatherland, and he says not only this, but we must enforce this new nationalism. He wants to enforce his ideology. The mainstream parties or mainstream politicians, mainstream political thinkers, they'll say, well, we should ban this party. And what they don't understand, maybe they do understand this, but we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. What they don't understand is that their political predecessors in the 1930s tried this, and it didn't work. It did not work. In fact, in Michael Burleigh's book, on the rise and fall of the Third Reich, he talks about how the German government, before the rise of Hitler, tried to ban the Nazi uniform. Yes, before the Nazis took power, the German government said, okay, that uniform that you guys like to wear, you can't wear anymore. It's illegal. Did that stop the Nazis? And there were numerous Nazi media publications that were banned by the German government. Did that stop the rise of Nazism? It did not. It was like Lutheranism. You know, Luther popped up, and was he the reason why Protestantism spread everywhere? Even if Luther was never born, someone else like him would have popped up, and it would have spread everywhere anyway. It's like what Hilaire Belloc said. He said that Luther preaching Protestantism was like someone just walking up to ducks and throwing bread at the ducks. I mean, the ducks already want the bread. You're just giving them what they had been wanting for a while now. And so Hitler pops up at a time when that's what people wanted. People hated the Jews, they were tired of the Jews, and they wanted someone who would be their hero against this Jewish menace that they collectively believed existed. Another problem that I've noticed is that people believe that because a group is banned, or because a group is being censored or hindered in any way by the establishment, that it's automatically the good guy. Must be the good guy. So if you have a right-wing political movement like the AfD, and let's say they get banned, tons of people all over the Western world are going to say, these are the good guys. And look, they must be the good guys because the elites are going after them. Here's the problem with this way of thinking. You see, the people who would decry a banning of the AfD party are going to be right-wingers. for the most part. These are going to be right-wing people who sympathize with the AFD. So the reason why they would sympathize with a banned AFD is because they're already right-wingers themselves. Because if the AFD, or if a party like the AFD ever took full power, they would definitely censor their enemies. They would definitely persecute their enemies, just like the Nazis did. See, the Nazis were persecuted, and then once they took power, they persecuted all their political enemies. It's like the Puritans. You know, they say the Puritans were people who wanted to observe religious freedom. No, that's a bunch of garbage. The Puritans were people who wanted to leave England so that they could persecute other people. Yes, they were being persecuted in England. They were being persecuted by the Anglicans in England, and they wanted to flee to a place where they could freely persecute other people, because that's what they did. They persecuted other Protestants. They persecuted Catholics. They were monsters. They were absolute monsters. They were fleeing England because people in England were sick of them because they were monsters. So the Nazis were monsters. Even before they took power, they were monsters. And the German government and the Austrian government said, okay, we're going to try to restrict you guys. And it didn't work. And then once they took power, once those Nazis took power, they murdered their political enemies. They persecuted people. They did mass censorship. They did mass oppression, and they did all sorts of oppressive policies. I mean, mass murder, exterminating other people, the whole thing. So just because a group is politically persecuted does not make them victims. The people who decry the censoring of a political group tend to agree with the ideology of that censored political group. Because if it was up to them, they would censor their enemies. If someone comes up and says, oh, you know, this political party is being censored, or this political group is being censored, don't just automatically think that because that group or that person is being censored that they're the good guys, that they are fighting for a righteous cause. Actually look at their ideology and see what they believe in. See what they believe in, and then make a judgment. Christians are being persecuted. Okay, look at their ideology. They're fighting for human life. They're fighting against abortion. They're fighting against paganism. And in that case, I would say, yeah, that's a righteous cause. We should support those people. But if you see someone being persecuted and you see that those people who are being restricted or censored are advancing a very dangerous and demonic ideology like Nazism, and you still support those people, then I would say you're a walking red flag. Anyway, those are my thoughts on that. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.